stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
It was a real downer last time. There were lots of specifics, but really, if we're recapping what happened in the last episode, there's only one thing that's especially important. Despite all of the effort of Emile and the Beowulf and Newton's Folly to race back to Cinder to be able to defend the people of Concord against the siege of the Imperium, despite all of their best efforts, they could not make it back in time. The updates they got from the sector net showed that the Imperium successfully breached the door and was successful in their conquest. I'm going to make a little bit of a vignette here. There's a moment towards the end that I really want to highlight. This is going to give us a little bit of a different context on it. This is the moment when the Imperium breaches the door. Because while we weren't specific last time, I think that what actually happened is it's not that they finally blew the big iron doors open. They didn't breach through that and then manage to fight their way in. No, what actually happens during this moment, as we see all of these Vault Hunter soldiers lined up on the inside, they're taking shifts just in case it ever happens. There's always booms and thuds and a lot to be afraid of as they sit there anticipating in terror the moment when the doors finally give way. How long will it be? Will the Beowulf come in time? All of these thoughts going through their heads. But then suddenly the doors, they just open. They open on their own. And there's great confusion, and in addition to that, this is happening at a time where their smallest shift is available. This is in the middle of the night, something like that, where they have some watch, but a lot of the people are trying to get some sleep. They're short-staffed. The doors open up. As people scramble to try and rouse everybody else for the moment of the Imperium's arrival, Magpie is nowhere to be found. In fact, if we look really closely at the doors, Magpie is back in the communications room, and we see by the contents of the screen on the computer that he's next to, he was the one who opened up the doors. And perhaps we even see signs of the messaging between him and the Imperium. They have been communicating, and perhaps this is why they were unwilling to speak with Valkyrie. Despite her warnings to not deal with Magpie, they already had been, and he had already cut a deal with them. Magpie, ever the politician, is going to get out of this safely and unimprisoned. So let's take our +1 momentum from that and then come back to Emile and the Beowulf and Newton's Folly having arrived on the dark side of this world in their attempt to try and get in a little bit hidden. Now, I am actually going to roll some oracles here because I don't know what they're going to find. We've left it a little bit nebulous exactly how late they are to arrive. Now, I know that the plan of the Imperium was they were going to... We established last time they weren't there to slaughter everybody. They were going to capture them, and I think it's reasonable to assume they're bringing them back to be re-imprisoned. Concord was established by a bunch of people who broke out of an Imperium prison. Perhaps they're going to be taken back to one. The question is, though, have they actually had time to leave? Are they already gone? Are they loaded onto the ships and those ships left? Or is that still in progress? I don't know, and I'm going to leave that up to fate. We're asking the Oracle, and I will say that given how many waypoints we still went through before, like if we're looking back at last time, we had a number of updates via logs about what had happened, which seemed to include the idea that they had lost, the Imperium had taken over, and everybody was cursing Tycoon's name. Those logs updated, and then we had time to jump to a few waypoints, and only then finally get to Cinder. So I think it's honestly likely that they've already left. But we're going to ask the Oracle, has the Imperium already left with the prisoners? With the odds being likely, we get yes. That yes would have been true on 50-50 as well. Would not have been true on unlikely, but it was a pretty strong yes. So the fleet arrives here, and secretive as they were trying to be about it all, it seems that it's not especially necessary. They get here, and there are no signs of the Imperium. I think from that point, they're going to indeed land and kind of survey what's going on, because while they're talking all about, like, what are the next steps, what are the plans, they need to get a better idea of what it's like on the ground. You know, is anybody alive? Like, the logs only took them so far. They need to know what happened. They don't see the Imperium ships, but there might be evidence left behind of what exactly went down. So they go down to the planet, they get into this hangar, and, you know, the doors are still operational because they weren't blown open, but clearly there's wreckage everywhere. There's all kinds of debris and lots of carnage left behind. You know, there are certainly, there's no people that are just, like, left wounded and moaning or anything like that. Anybody who like that would have been taken aboard the Imperium ships. But there are certainly dead bodies from both sides that are left here. Actually, I don't know. Probably not from both sides. I would assume that the Imperium would probably make sure that they probably have a procedure for their own, like, soldiers to make sure that they get a proper burial or whatever their tradition is. They probably wouldn't have left their own peoples just like dead bodies waiting around here. But the Vault Hunters, I think they're enough, like, official kind of like persona non grata as far as the Imperium is concerned that I think their corpses are just left behind. They're just left to rot, dry out, or whatever will happen on the surface of Cinder. I think the doors were left open, so probably even it's hotter and more acrid inside than it would ordinarily be. You know, usually they have some better climate control to help make sure that the insides, like, you don't have to be wearing all of these, you know, scarves and face coverings. You don't have to keep your skin from being exposed from the air that's just utterly toxic and abrasive. That's happening, though. It can't keep up with the big hangar doors all the way open. So they're walking through this environment, and, you know, an awful battle happened here. It's bad. And I think what we're going to do is let's do this as a gather information. Because we're searching for clues. It's the very first thing on gathering information. We're searching for clues of what exactly happened and anything we can learn about, you know, who might have survived, where survivors were taken, anything we can find from all of that. So this is going to be a wits roll, and we don't have anything especially that's going to help us. Actually, my scavenger helps me. When you gather information or resupply by scavenging a wreck, ruin, or abandoned site, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. I think this is, at this point now, it's kind of a combination of all those, but it's sort of an abandoned site. We are gathering information, and it is by scavenging. Like, it's not like Emile scavenging for supplies exactly. You know, he's not resupplying, but he is looking through all of the wreckage and seeing, like, what clues can he draw from the little bits of scrap here and there, from the signs of the battle. Like, he is a type of person who is used to looking for important objects, and the objects are telling the story here. So we actually are going to get a +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. So here, I'm glad I reconsidered that. So wits with a +1 gives us only a weak hit. I had the one challenge die that tried to play. Like, one of my challenge dice rolled a 1, the other one rolled a 9, and I only rolled a 1 on my action die. So Emile was only the horror made him not try all that hard, I guess. But we did get a weak hit, which is a hit. So we're going to take 1 momentum from our scavenger asset. That brings us up to 5. And because it's a weak hit, what we learn is complicating, and then we'll take another 1 momentum. I think at one point, Emile finds, I think despite the attempts for the Imperium to, like, take in all of their fallen soldiers, they did miss that, like, there's an Imperium comlink from that one of the soldiers would have hidden on there that fell out at some point. It got tucked behind some rubble, and Emile was able to find it. And it has some of the messages from, like, higher-ups in the Imperium, that some of the communications Emile is able to glean off of this comlink and find out about the plan, which was indeed that everybody is being taken to the secure facility. But what they don't know, and this is why it's complicating, is the route that's being taken to get there. Yeah, they find out that they didn't leave that long ago, like, based on timestamps on this information. They only have so much of a head start. In theory, Emile and all of them might have been able to catch up, but they don't really know the route that they're taking. There's a lot of different ways you can calculate to get into the spot in the terminus that they're trying to get to. But they find this out. Everybody's being taken to this prison. We're going to take one more momentum as we now know their specific destination. Because there's a lot of different places. There are a lot of Imperium prisons. But now we know the specific one they're going to. But we don't know exactly how they're going to get there, which means it would be hard or impossible with the amount of information we have now, without an incredible luck, to intercept them and try and get to them before they got to the prison. Possible, maybe. There may still be more that could be gleaned, but we don't have enough information from what we have now. That's really the brunt of it. I think in this process, though, I think this information all gets shared around. And, of course, Emile and Tycoon and Bash are kind of the de facto, like, the three in charge of making these executive decisions, with Emile mostly just being allowed in the room. Like, Emile can decide for himself what he is going to do, but it's really Tycoon and Bash that are going to be determining what their ships are going to do. I mean, they are captains of their respective ships. And Bash is, of course, gung-ho to catch up, have the fight and everything. Tycoon is more representing the side of caution, which is that, they don't really know how to catch up. It's so unlikely they'd be able to that perhaps it would be wiser to stick around here. Like, it's more like a facility here. They have a full hangar to work in, and they have, the workshop that's left over from, the fixery in conjunction with the one on the Beowulf. Between those two working together, they could get the Beowulf restored to not have the, like, we talked about last time how it's got kind of a fatal flaw where it could be one good clean shot in the right spot could just utterly blow up the ship. They could take care of that problem. Tycoon basically advises that it's not worth trying to chase them down when we can rescue them. We can prepare, we can rescue. Bash doesn't want any of that. Bash is basically demanding that clearly there must be more for Emile to uncover. Like, look deeper into the comlink, find anything, find some sign of the way they were going to go, find a route we're going to get there. Or even failing that, Bash is like, we should just go all out to just beat them to the prison and wait for them there. Like, we don't have to know what route they're going to take to get there. We know where they're winding up. All we have to do is beat them to the place, go as fast as possible, wait them out. We'll intercept them on the way to the prison. And you're suggesting that we do that while we'll be utterly pincered by the members of the prison? It's what you're advising is utter folly. There's no way we would win such a fight. Already we were going to be up against steep odds, and you wish to make them even harder. I wish to make a statement that we're not going to be held down by the Imperium. Not when we have the kind of confined firepower that we have, and the right of it all. All those people, they think they can tell us what to do, tell us where we can and can't poke our noses. We gotta be able to be free. And if we go down teaching them that lesson, well, then the whole rest of the galaxy is gonna benefit for our sacrifice, and that alone is worth it. They'd benefit from nothing. If we went down in such a battle, no one would even know that it happened. The Imperium would never let them know. Bash, you know how hard they've tried to make sure that they can keep the secrets of the vaults. Why do you think they would let anything they don't want to be public out there to be public? It would be for nothing. Let us stay. Let us prepare. And yes, we will rescue them when the time comes, when it makes sense, but not a moment before. Let us make that statement when we can survive and come back and spread the word. Tycoon going with that gives up the one thing we have on our side right now, don't you see? We're never going to have enough firepower to just full-on overtake them. What exactly are we even going to prepare for? But the one thing we would be giving up by waiting is that we know where they're going right now. Take another few weeks to prepare, or however long it's going to be, they could be transferred by then. I'm sure they'll have figured out that a comlink went missing eventually, or that we'd have some way of finding out where they went. They'll switch it around. It'll be a cup and ball game. Then we'll never get him back. You're giving up our moment because you're a coward. I am practical, not a coward. And you are fool, not brave. Like, it is tense during this meeting. Everybody's feeling it. I don't think, like, the whole room has all the... Like, this is more private. They find a space to do this with just the three of them and some, like, specifically curated staff. But it gets tense enough that they need a break. Everybody parts ways. And Emile needs to decide, like, what does he want? He keeps pretty quiet in there. In the past, he took Tycoon's side to be able to, like, try and cozy up to him a little bit more. I don't know that he's vocally chosen a side yet. He's still pondering. Like, they both kind of make valid points. Kind of. I think in the meantime, he's going to try and find a way to have it both ways. He wants to redouble his efforts to, like, find the route, like, find the ability to intercept them before they can get to the prison. And so he's racking his brain on how he might be able to do that. You know, what more can he learn from about what happened? And he goes to a really comfortable place in order to do this. You know, a place he's familiar with. He's pacing around, and he winds up back in the fixery. And it turns out that, in a certain sense, there's a survivor left behind. Not any of the Vault Hunters per se, but somebody who wasn't considered to take prisoner. Buzzard is here. And as we recall, when we last spoke to Buzzard, Buzzard had developed a kind of proto-sentience. Buzzard was becoming self-aware. Now, Emile also left for, well, not dead, but left unconscious and, like, sent back on a skiff because Buzzard was asking a lot of questions and was witness to Emile having left. But Buzzard knows a little bit about what happened. And maybe Buzzard could somehow know anything about the way they're going. Emile is walking around the room. He doesn't even notice Buzzard either, but he's interrupted as he just hears,
Emile, you have been gone a long time.
And Emile, of course, turns suddenly, being very startled by it, almost drops whatever he's holding, kind of fumbles it and goes, oh my god, Buzzard. I almost forgot.
They all forgot. Buzzard remained unseen.
Yeah, it seems you have. Looks like a real horror show happened here.
It was as you describe.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had to see all that. What happened with Firestarter? Were you with him? Did he... I didn't see him out there. And actually, that is a good cause to, for any given named character that comes up, other than Magpie, who made a deal, I think we're going to use the oracles to determine, did they make it? Because some people just had casualties. They died both in the collapse that happened in the junk pile, and then there was at least some amount of firefight at the doorway before everybody was captured. Some people definitely died. So I'm going to roll in the oracle to find out what did happen to Firestarter. Like, most importantly, did he live? Now, because Firestarter was in his, like, mobility device, his hover chair, I don't know that it was as likely that he would have been in the junk pile when that collapse happened. So whereas most people, I'm probably going to put it at, like, 50-50 whether or not they survived, because a lot of people died, I'm going to downgrade it for him for unlikely, just because he wasn't in one of the major events that killed a hell of a lot of people. So we're just going to say unlikely that he died. Let's see. Did Firestarter die? No. And actually, even on 50-50, he still would have been alive. But Buzzard says,
He lived. He made it out. It is strange. I do not feel him.
What do you mean, feel him? You felt when he was around?
Yes. He had a control mechanism. It had a signal that connected to my body. I would feel it.
And those words, like, they rattle around in Emile's brain, and And Buzzard like tries to say more, and Emile does a full like, shh, wait, hold on, I got something. You said the signal, you'd feel its presence when it was nearby, like a radio signal. I got it. And he starts moving around almost frantically because he's got an idea. He remembers that the Imperium had been able to track his movements because he had stolen a bunch of the snub-nosed fighters. They deactivated the anti-tamper tracking devices because they didn't want the Imperium to be able to manipulate them anymore. Well, whatever ships they came here with, Emile recognizes they probably have those tracking devices on them too. The Imperium probably tracks all of their ships just in case anything goes wrong. Snub-nosed fighters, possibly even their big carriers, and what have you. If Emile can find out specifically which ship came, and if he's able to reverse engineer the tracking system on one of these modules that they broke, he might well be able to track specifically where they're headed on the way back to the prison. Now, that's a few big ifs. First, it's only going to work at all if he can find out about which ship are they tracking. He needs to be able to find that. So he's going to ask Buzzard if there's any chance Buzzard found out, overheard anything, any indication of specifically what ship this was that everybody was taken away on. Was he able to observe this? This is right by the hangar. They may well have loaded people onto some shuttles or anything. Did Buzzard see any ships that Emile could then track? And I think I'm going to do this as another gather information. And this time he's conducting an investigation kind of by... Rather than just ask the Oracle whether or not Buzzard saw anything, because this isn't a compel move. Buzzard would tell him. He's got no reason to hide it. Emile's been relatively nice to Buzzard, and their motivations largely align. So it's not about compelling Buzzard to answer. And rather than just ask the Oracle on random chance whether or not Buzzard saw this, we're going to treat it as if Emile is researching through what Buzzard knows by conducting this investigation, asking the right questions to get down to what he needs to know. And we'll let the dice determine how good of an answer he's able to get. So this one is a wits, but he's not scavenging in order to get this, so we don't get the +1 this time. But we make the wits roll as Emile asks these questions, and we find out, did Buzzard happen to see any kind of transport ship that he could get details on and be able to track? All right, once again, we have a weak hit with very similar dice results to last time, honestly. So we're going to get some information, but it's complicated, and then we're going to get 1 momentum out of it. So if there's some information, Buzzard clearly saw something. He knows that I think this is indeed verifying that they had to take, they couldn't land their big ships that were up in orbit bombarding the place. Those were too big. But there were shuttles that would take prisoners back and forth between these ships. They did that rather than fully deorbit the giant ships up above, anything like that. Buzzard knows that ship happened, but he certainly didn't get a serial number or anything. He has some physical description that would narrow it down. Knows that they have that, knows the capacity, which would help narrow it down. A lot of details like that if Emile were looking at a database or something, he could cross-reference and cross off a lot of other candidates. But it's not as good as if he had been able to narrow it down to the specific ship, he'd be a lot faster at being able to track it. As is with what he knows right now, any given time they're trying to track the ship, he's going to have to go through a process of narrowing it down. They could be wrong. Oh no, all right, I've got what's complicated about this. Buzzard notes that he was never close enough to be able to get a specific ID for the ship, the information that would be necessary to truly narrow it down to a specific ship and track it. However, here's what Emile does learn that's complicated. A ship did land here, and it was within an area that definitely would have been captured by some of the surveillance that goes on inside. If Emile reviewed footage, he could maybe find it, and it would be close enough that he could probably actually get that information. It would be in the surveillance matter. The problem is, in all of the bombardment of this place, that the surveillance systems are on the fritz. They can't really be accessed right now. He'd have to be able to repair that before he could review any of that footage. And so Emile, he nods his head and he recognizes okay, but broken things can be fixed. We have a process by which we can do this. And so Emile shares this information with Tycoon and with Bash that, like, he thinks there might actually be a way to track them down, but it's going to be a multi-step process. And I think he's going to try and get everybody to be happy with this, like with a compromise. What this scene is about, as you know, I'm going to continue trying to make these like pretty quick so we can make a lot of progress. Emile is going to try and compel Tycoon to agree that, like, if he can get this to work, if he can track them down so they can beat them to the prison, will Tycoon take the Beowulf along to do this fight as planned? That's the compel move, is if there's a way, will you join us? And I think we're just going to go straight to that. And it's definitely a heart move. It's just presenting his case and making it clear, like, there is a way. Are you willing to risk it if we don't have to get pincered by the prison? If we can beat them along their journey? And with momentum of 7, making a heart roll, we get... It's a miss. Now, I could make this a weak hit if I burn momentum, but I don't know that I want to do that. I think Tycoon just refuses. I'm not going to make a demand that costs greatly. Tycoon is just... He's had more chance to think about this all since the hype of, like, we'll all go down together with this ship. Now they've had a chance to land and they recognize, like, just how many ifs there are. You know, Tycoon lays it out there, like, this all relies on so many things that haven't even happened, and even if you're able to get them tracked down, how far behind we'd be by then. It's a fool's errand. We're not going to make it in time. I'm not going to promise anything that is that foolhardy. We have to put our focus into things that can work. You and Besh can do what you choose, of course, but I will not command the Beowulf to go on this errand. Not until the Beowulf is fixed. And even then, only if we have a means to do this. Our brothers and sisters there, I wish them the best, and I hope that we can rescue them someday, or that they can escape all over again. It's happened before. The cause is not served by sacrifice in the name of glory. I will not follow. And Bash turns to Emile and says, well, then what do you think? Can I still count on you? You know, you've made it all this way. You've done so much. You've stolen all of these ships. Do you still have it in you to bring him to the Imperium? Do you believe in yourself that you can do this fast enough so we can catch up with them? I've heard you're capable. Are you going to prove it to me? Are you going to come along? You know, rescue these folk and show that old fool over there that it's worth putting it on the line? And Emile ponders this, and I think, partly to stop, like, screwing myself over on putting so much effort into things that don't wind up paying off, Emile thinks back to everything that he said last session to Dash about how he needs to prove to Vert that he needs to prove Vert wrong, that he is a good person, and he does also think about he had been on slightly better terms with Valkyrie, and certainly really good terms with Cypher, who is there. And Fern, he's not seen Fern around. Fern might be there too. He would have expected to see Fern by now. Between all those factors, I think Emile determines he's going to swear an iron vow to rescue them. So let's do that. God, what rank should I set this at? This is at least dangerous, quite possibly formidable. That feels more... Formidable feels like a better fit than just dangerous. They gotta hunt these people down, catch up, take them down in combat, while not just blowing up the ship so they can rescue whatever prisoners are aboard. Yeah, this is more than just dangerous. So we're gonna make a heart roll here. And I'm going to say, for the sake of this, that one of the other people in the room that's important, because everybody has kind of like second in commands and things like that. We know Dash has been traveling with Emile. Why don't we say that Dash is here? And when Emile swears this vow, he actually, like, his eyes lock with Dash, who is a connection. And he thinks back to the bonding they did last time, talking about all this and why Emile is not giving up. And Emile is actually going to swear this vow to Dash. So we get to add a +1 to this. Holy shit, a strong hit with a double 6 match. I didn't even need that +1 for swearing it to Dash, but it's even better that I did. Emile swears an iron vow to Dash, with just, unblinking eyes looking to each other, that he is going to find a way to track them down and rescue the imprisoned Vault Hunters from Cinder. So we're emboldened. It's clear what we must do. Take 2 momentum. And it's true, it is clear what we must do. We already laid out what it is. So we take 2 momentum. In addition, we're going to get to develop our relationship with Dash because we have sworn a vow to undertake a perilous quest in their service, basically. Like, Dash certainly wants to save these people. They're important to him. So we're going to mark progress on that. He's up to 6 full boxes. By the time this is done, we're definitely going to be able to try and turn him into a bond. I could try rolling it now, but I'm not going to. I think once this is completed, that's when Emile is going to be ready to forge a bond with Dash. Because that's going to really solidify, like, Emile did it. He had a perfect opportunity to give up, and he didn't, and saw it through and was successful, hopefully. So our momentum is maxed out, but I have not yet given myself the benefit for the double 6 match. What could that be? Oh, you know what? Because this is double 6, I'm going to make this a very big narrative one. Tycoon sighs and shakes his head a bit and says, "You all perhaps do have something that is actual bravery, even if it seems foolish to me. You know that I was not always a captain of the Beowulf. I've moved around from ship to ship. And while I am not willing to go along risking myself on a ship with such a fatal flaw, perhaps it is time for me, like the hermit crab, to move along to something else. If you truly have this bravery inside, if you're willing to see this through, your fleet is going to need all the firepower you can muster. And the Beowulf is certainly a ship with a lot of firepower. I'll make you a deal, Emile. If you are going on this quest and are so willing, leave me Briar's Promise, your new ship. I'll do what I can to fix it. Go about perhaps doing simpler things. I'm not meant for a ship with it so combat-oriented. I will leave it to you who wish to do so." And Emile will absolutely make that trade. So, because of this double 6 match, Emile is now captain of the Beowulf. I'm going to honestly... we don't know what the Beowulf has been up to. We know the Beowulf has a fatal flaw to it. So, while Emile's going to now be in charge of his ship that full-on has heavy cannons and will have his workshop in it already, because that's where it was left, here's what I'm going to do to keep this relatively simple. And to help make it so this is good enough for, like, just the double 6 match. I don't know what state Beowulf is in on the outside. We're going to just leave it at the same integrity that Raya's Promise had, and we'll just keep it simple like that, rather than think about how to change the integrity. However, the Beowulf is definitely battered, which means our max momentum is now 8, and so it should go down. We were maxed out at 9, it's going to be 8 now. I would consider making it cursed just by the sound of it, because it's so ready to blow up. The only reason I'm not is, like, I feel like narratively we've established it could be fixed, and cursed can't be. Like, cursed is forever. So we're not going to do that. But it is battered to help represent that problem. Anyhow, Emile makes this trade after making sure that Tycoon is absolutely certain, and Tycoon says, "It is time. I hope you have the best of luck and can prove me wrong, Emile. Find success. But if you're going to do so, you'll have to go quickly. Trek this ship. Do these things you say you can do." And Emile darts out of the room to work on that. So, first things first. We're working in a workshop right now. We are functionally in a hangar. We're functionally in a facility between the 2 workshops and being parked inside a hangar and everything. I'm gonna claim we're in a facility. Emile needs to spread repair points around. He needs to be able to repair the surveillance system so we can start tracking this down. So we're gonna make a repair move. We are in a workshop. Now, we're not repairing in the field, so we don't get to add a +1 from that. But we are a gearhead, so we get to add a +1 from that. So anyway, wits with a +1. we have another strong hit with a match. This one's only double 2, though, so it's not that good. But you know what that means. Because we are at a facility, a strong hit alone gets us 5 full points. 5 points is enough to repair any device for 3. I could also clear the battered impact on a vehicle for 2. I could actually, in this time, still repair the Beowulf somehow. Like, Emile's just faster at it, I guess. I would take 1 momentum on a hit, but we're already maxed out. God, I should. Narratively, that would be the best choice for me. Because then I could even take that 1 momentum. The battered would be gone. We'd have a higher cap. I guess, oh, here's how we do it to make it work with the narrative. For, why they didn't think they had enough time to do this, but they actually do. He has Ironsides and Buzzard work together to, with ideas that Emile had in mind, work on repairing the security system, get that surveillance back online. It frees up Emile's time to be able to fix the problem with the warp core, fix the problem with the Beowulf, and the way he does this, if we remember, one of the big ways that this all came about, Emile was making amends by getting, a bonkers good power core for Concord. It was going to be able to power their device to keep them hidden from the Imperium, from long-range scans to just appear like nobody was living here. Well, the Imperium found out where they are anyway. They don't need that anymore. So while the power core is damaged enough from the inside of the Beowulf that it would still have that chain reaction problem if it got hit in the wrong place, rather than fix the power core, Emile does the faster thing. He swaps it out. He puts in the power core, the really good power core that he gifted to Concord. He puts that in there. That fixes the battery condition. It's no longer a sitting duck. We now have a higher max momentum. As a result, we can actually get that 1 momentum we get. He fixes the surveillance problem, and we still need to accommodate the fact that we got a double 2 match. I'm going to just allow that to let's just keep it simple. While Emile was doing all of this, when he was getting the power core, I'm going to say that he was also able to scavenge up a little bit in the way of supplies from what was left near the power core, just things that will help keep the ship in running order. I'm going to just allow myself the opportunity to make the resupply move, to try and just build our supply back. If it weren't for this match, I wouldn't say there's enough time or things left behind for Emile to be able to, but the match suggests he was able to find the right kind of things. I will give myself the ability to make this move. So, we're making resupply, we're scavenging, so it's going to be wits with a +1. You're not going to believe this. Another double 2 match. Strong hit with a match once again. And on Scavenger, if we get a strong hit with a match, we also find something of unique value, significance, or function. Envision the nature of this discovery, take 2 momentum, and mark 2 ticks on your Discovery's legacy track. So, okay, one thing at a time here. This is a strong hit. We are unprepared. So we're going to clear the impact and take 1 supply. So we're no longer unprepared. We get 1 supply back. Now, because our Scavenger allows us to take 1 momentum on a hit, we actually are going to be maxed out at 10 momentum now that we're not capped that way. And because this was a match, we need to find something of unique value, significance, or function. I don't know what this is. What does Emile find when he's monkeying around with the power core? He finds something especially good that could be helpful for this. I'm going to roll a descriptor and focus to get an idea over what is this thing that he got that's a full-on discovery. It changes his understanding of the world to find this thing. Blocked beacon. Well, that immediately makes me think of a tracking device that's not working, which makes me think of the idea of how they were able to remote trigger the electrical bursts. I think Emile's going to find on one of the fallen, in the rubble or something that fell. At some point, Emile is looking back through that rubble around where he once found the comlink. And perhaps it's even just the comlink itself, but he has the epiphany of, wait a minute, maybe this comlink has the ability to remote trigger these anti-tamper devices, just like the ones that went off on us. And so Emile looks through and verifies that, yeah, this comlink has that capability. Now, he needs to be able to connect to the proper ship to make it go off, but once he surveys this surveillance footage and makes it all work, once he's able to track down the specific ship, Emile is going to be able to, with appropriate hacking, like I don't think it's going to be an automatic thing, but he will have a device that is capable of making their ships have such an incredible electrical explosion inside. So let's take 2 ticks on our Discovery's Legacies track, which puts us up to 3 out of 4. We're 1 tick away from another full box. Now, I've already got 4 experience to use that I haven't used on anything just yet. I've been saving it up. We earned it last time, and I'm still not sure exactly what asset I want that feels justified in the fiction. I'm kind of waiting for the right moment where it feels like we've led to a moment that Emile should have a certain thing. None of it feels justified yet, so I'm holding on to it. But we're most of our way to another box. You know, it didn't occur to me in the moment, but I have a bit of a note from the editing room. I was talking about how I was waiting for the right narrative moment to spend XP on something. Well, Emile now has control of the Beowulf, which has the heavy cannons module. At least we've always treated it like it did. Last time Emile was responsible for flying it, it was a weird situation where he was kind of losing access to one ship and gaining access to another, so I kind of let him trade what module he'd be able to use just based on that. But if this is going to be more of Emile's official ship, let's actually spend the XP to officially have the heavy cannons module. So I've spent 3 XP on that. We now officially have that. We can make use of it when we're in the Beowulf. Anyway, back to the episode. All these things are coming up Emile's way right now. He has a plan of action, and it's around this time that they find out that, yep, the robots have indeed finished working on the surveillance. They're able to play it back and analyze it to find out a specific ship that they're tracking. I think we should give ourselves a mark of progress. Let's fill in a box of progress on rescuing the prisoners. We finally have the ship that we're supposed to be tracking down. And with that information, if we get close enough, so I think whatever Emile has on the comlink, like it's relatively short range. He couldn't set off the device from here, but if they ever catch up, Emile will be able to use this device to connect to their ships and set off their anti-tamper electrical bursts. Once again, assuming that he's able to break certain amounts of security. Like he has a device that makes it possible, but it's still not going to be automatic. With that all set up, you know, Emile loads up a crew, figures out who all's coming along, who's not. But Emile is now in control of a very large ship, the Beowulf, and he's still not like a Vault Hunter captain. All the people that were crewing on the Beowulf, they don't necessarily have to come along with him and follow his orders. Like a lot of them, they followed Tycoon. But Emile clearly can't control the ship all on his own, and even with the help of like Ironsides and Dash, the Beowulf would be a hell of a ship to pilot with just them. They're going to need more crew to man its guns, things like that. But they're not just inherently convinced. So before we set out, I think Emile's going to try and make a big speech to compel them, like, you know, this is about saving your people, and I'm going to need all the help I can get. I've fixed the problem. It's no longer even a it's not the death trap it was. This ship is ready to go. It's in its best state possible. But I need your hands. I'm not in charge of you, but I need all the help I can get. Please join me. Crew this ship so that we can rescue them. Please. This is certainly a heart move. And let's see what we can do. We got our full momentum. And, well, it's a weak hit unless we burn momentum to make it a strong hit. I don't think I want to burn momentum for that. I think I'm good with the idea that there's a demand or complication. And in this case, it's an immediately apparent one to me. The complication is, like, enough people to crew the ship adequately will come along. It's not everybody, but enough people will. However, it is made very clear, Emile's not in charge. He can fly the ship, he can tell it where to go, he can help track it, but, like, they're not taking orders from him. They're just flying on the same ship. So the complication is that there's not going to be a clear chain of command here. If there's anybody they would take orders from, when it comes down to it, it's going to be Bash. Like, Emile is not going to be able to dictate how anything goes. But good enough, he just needs the bodies. He needs the people to be able to service the actual ship. And with that, they need to get out of here. So here's what I'm going to do to keep this relatively simple. Rather than, like, see whether or not Emile can track this ship, I think he can. I think it's within his capabilities. This is just going to represent why it's kind of nebulous when they'll actually catch up. So I'm going to do this as an expedition that everybody's going to be on. You know, they're going to undertake this together. We'll make progress towards catching up, but there's going to be a clock. We're going to be fighting the clock of, you know, the ship that they're trying to catch up to. When that clock is filled, it's going to reach the prison, its destination. And then if that happens, it's going to be a much more challenging fight and rescue. Now, because they're able to track this ship, it's not only at least possible to intercept them, but I think I'm going to give it a 6 clock rather than a 4. I think they've got good information and perhaps can push it a little bit to try and fly at speed, but they're going to have to be basically doing it with edge the entire time. Anyhow, let's do that. So we're moving at speed. We're going to roll plus edge on this. I need to determine... I think this one is just going to be... I'm just going to keep this dangerous, but I am going to make it only a 4 o'clock. I think that the reason it's only a dangerous amount they have to do is, like, catching up. The lead that the Imperium ships have is not nearly as big as how far they have to go. So this just represents how it's very likely that they'll be able to beat the clock on this. But the clock is only so long. So it's going to be a 4-segment clock. This is going to be the journey to catch up with the Imperium prisoner transport. We're rolling edge on this as Newton's Folly and the Beowulf, now under new management, take off from Cinder and leave to go try and track down. So this is just an edge move. I have nothing that's going to help me except a full 10 momentum if necessary. Oh, holy crap. That came so close to being a double 10 miss. The 3D dice that were rolling on my screen, it almost landed on double 10, and then one of the 10s moved over to still a 7. It's still a miss, to be clear, unless I burn all of this momentum to be just a weak hit. I rolled a 10 and a 7. But I am tired of not being able to undertake expeditions. I think even a weak hit, we need this right now. So the progress is going to cost us. I'm going to burn this momentum. Everything on our side gets us started, pushed out the dock. We are going to reach our waypoint. We are going to mark progress on the expedition. But we either make a suffer move of -2, 2 suffer moves of -1, or we got to face a peril at the waypoint and envision what we encounter. I'm leaning towards that. We don't have a lot to lose, but let's find out what kind of waypoint we reach. You know, where are we? As we head in sort of like a straight shot, we're headed back towards the terminus along a route that we've not really flown before. So it's all going to be new stuff. We're going to a new sector. So let's see what we got. What kind of... I think at the moment we're still going to be in the Outlands. We've not crossed the boundary into the terminus yet. But our waypoint, we encounter a planet. This planet is a Jovian world. It doesn't have any settlements on it, or around it, or anything like that. Which suggests the peril is probably not the planet itself. Well, unless maybe... We're going to say that this Jovian world, it's bigger than we accounted for when tracking this, when we were making our calculations on the jump. And so our ships come about inside the atmosphere of it. You know, our ships don't crash with anything, nothing like that. But we're inside this atmosphere that has gone like way wider than we were expecting. This world is like, for some reason, it's expanding. It's growing, and its gas is messing with all of our sensors. And of course, Newton's Folly still actually doesn't even have functional sensors. It's relying entirely on what Beowulf is willing to feed to them. They're flying blind, but due to this atmosphere is messing with even the Beowulfs. And the Beowulf can see, but it's all flickery. It's hard to get a lot of clear stuff. But it's picking up on like, it's giving little pings of like detected other forms nearby. But it's all crackly and like moving around. It's hard to get a good read on where it's coming from. And then there's this roar from inside the clouds. As it becomes clear just acoustically, there's something out here in this atmosphere. There may be no settlements, but there is some kind of a great flying beast in this gas giant. We're going to roll some creature oracles here. I think this thing, because this is a peril, and we're currently during our cooldown where we can't jump again. We're kind of stuck here for a bit. I want this to be, I'm going to roll on the ultra scale to find out, is this hill-sized, mountain-sized, or planet-sized? Also, I'm reading this table and it says, hill-sized is Titanic. I want to be clear, in the beginning of the episode, despite me describing VY572 as a Titanic cosmic space beast, I mean much bigger than this. VY572 is bigger than a planet. VY572 is off the charts, so not this version of Titanic, parentheses, hill-sized. More Titanic. Anyway, what scale is this? This is Titanic, but, hill-sized. It's baby Titanic for my purposes. There is a hill-sized creature out in the clouds. It's flying around. I'm not even going to roll for that. Like, it's an air creature. Its basic form, jellyfish/gas bag. So maybe it's less of a roar that we hear and more like there's a great rushing of wind that's pushing us off course. Like, we're moving around and we don't know why, because this thing is displacing so much air that it's fucking up where the ships even are. And so there's a lot of chatter about like, wait, are you moving? What are you moving towards? And we realize that no, it's just there's that much motion in the air. And I do kind of like the idea of this being like very literally jellyfish-like. And it's got all of these tendrils that dangle. It's coming down from overhead as it and it like expands. It expands its umbrella, which displaces enough air and makes like it makes a vacuum that rather than it descending towards us, it's like sucking us up towards. It is large enough to suck our ships up into its tentacles. It's trying to hunt us. And these tentacles are electric. If we get in there, it's going to shut down all of our systems and make it so that like our jump engines can't go. Like we'll be basically, if we touch those tentacles, we're going to be completely disabled. Now, I think I'm going to ask the Oracle. It's going to be above one of our ships. I don't think it's quite big enough to get above both of us because it's only hill-sized. But it's above one of our ships. It's going to be a 50-50. So I'm asking the Oracle, is this above Emile's ship? Is this above the Beowulf? Or above Newton's Folly? So, 50-50, is this above the Beowulf? Yes. Okay, well, that's probably for the better, honestly. Considering Newton... Well, actually, I don't know. It means Newton's Folly can't really help us in the same way because it has no sensors. So anyway, this great jellyfish creature, it's sucking the Beowulf up towards it, getting closer and closer to these tentacles. They're not fully aware what's even happening because their sensors are so messed up right now. All they know is that they're flying out of their control and still trying to figure out what is even up there. They're not completely aware of what the danger is. And as for whether they're going to be able to figure this out in time and counteract the motion of the air before they get disabled by these jellyfish tentacles, well, that's a question for next time. After what felt like a while of the dice being pretty brutal, I'm pretty happy to see the other side of things. That, yes, there are still good things in this world worth fighting for, and all that jazz. We actually had some good, strong hits with matches. It feels so nice. I do like story complications. I don't just want these all to be strong hits, but boy, sometimes is it invigorating to just be like, things can go well. Just basking in that for a little bit longer. Good things can happen. I'm sure we're going to be back soon to the feelings of before, but for the moment, it actually seems reasonable that maybe they can just pull this off. Maybe we can pull off this rescue and then, eventually get back to trying to salvaging the Reacher from the magma. It's been a little bit waylaid, and not to mention the whole needing to rid us of the wooden heart. I mean, given the progress that the wooden heart has made right now, we're sitting at 8 out of 10 on its threat track, and we only have 4 out of 10 on our progress. I don't know. We've got higher priorities. I feel like I've almost just kind of accepted in my mind that we're not going to be able to stop that. I'm not going to officially call it until the moment happens. I'm going to play until the whistle, but I don't honestly think Emile's going to be able to stop Sapphire from coming into this reality. We're going to see what that entails when it's time. But right now, it's time for more prompts. This week I decided I want to roll an action and a theme, and I want you to tell me what song does it make you think of. Presumably a real-world song. I'm not asking you to make up a song on the fly from this, though if you can do that, all the better. I just somehow doubt that kind of effort is going to come up just to answer one of these prompts. So, the action and theme are communicate and wealth. You should be able to think of any number of songs of that. I know I've got a few in my head right now, but what song does communicate wealth make you think of? Send me your answers to starforgedpod@gmail.com. You could also leave them in a comment below this episode, and hey, you know what? I might as well throw in there as long as I'm doing the whole, call to action thing. I try not to do this too often, but hey, if there's any chance that somehow you are listening to episode 56 of this podcast, and you've still not actually left me a rating, I sure would appreciate it. Again, I'm not going to tell you which rating it has to be, but rating me, particularly on a big platform like iTunes or Spotify, sure would mean a lot. So please, leave me that rating, and play me out, music.